Today, we're looking at a psalm that appears in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it raises a question that can be confusing if we're not careful with our terms. Where did Jesus go after he died? Our primary text is Psalm 16, verses 10 and 11. David writes, "For you will not abandon me to Sheol. You will not allow your faithful one to see decay. You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures." At first glance, this sounds like a personal expression of trust. David is confident that God will not abandon him to death. But as we read more closely, and especially as we see how the New Testament uses this passage, we realize that something deeper is going on. So the question we need to answer is this: what does David mean by Sheol, and how does this connect to Jesus? To start, we need to define that word, Sheol. In the Old Testament, Sheol is the realm of the dead. It is not, at this stage, the fully developed idea of hell as a place of final punishment. Instead, it is the place where the dead go, both the righteous and the wicked. It is often described as a place of stillness, silence, and shadow. It is, in simple terms, the grave understood as a realm. So when David says, "You will not abandon me to Sheol," he is not primarily saying, "God, don't send me to hell." He is instead saying, "God, you will not leave me in the realm of the dead." But then he adds something more specific. "You will not allow your faithful one to see decay." Now the focus narrows. This is no longer just about entering death. It's about not remaining in death long enough for the body to decompose. And that creates a problem, because David did die. He was buried, and his body did decay. So either David is speaking in exaggerated poetic language, or he is speaking about something or someone beyond himself. When we turn to the New Testament, we find our answer. In Acts 2, Peter stands up on the day of Pentecost and gives a sermon in which he quotes this exact passage. And then he explains it in a way that leaves no ambiguity. He says, "Brothers and sisters, I can confidently speak to you about the patriarch David. He is both dead and buried, and his tomb is with us to this day." In other words, David cannot be talking about himself in the fullest sense, because the very thing he described, not seeing decay, did not happen to him. Then Peter explains what David was actually doing. He says that David was a prophet, and that he was speaking ahead of time about the Messiah. And then he applies the verse directly to Jesus. He was not abandoned in Hades, and his flesh did not experience decay. Here is where the language shifts. The Hebrew word Sheol becomes the Greek word Hades, but the meaning remains the same, the realm of the dead. So now we can restate the claim clearly. Psalm 16 is ultimately about Jesus, and it is saying two things. First, that Jesus would truly enter the realm of the dead, and second, that he would not remain there. This itself raises an important question. What does it actually mean that Jesus was in Hades? This is where we need to be careful, because there are a couple of common misunderstandings surrounding this topic. Sometimes people hear Hades and think of hell as a place of final punishment. But in the New Testament, that idea is more closely tied to a different term, Gehenna. It's important not to get these two terms crossed up, as the Western understanding of the word hell almost always refers to Gehenna and not Hades. But to understand historical Christianity, it's also important to know that hell also would have been used to refer to Hades. Always examine your terms closely. In the passage we're examining here in Acts 2, Hades, like Sheol in Psalm 16, refers to the realm of the dead, not the final judgment. So when we say that Jesus was in Hades, we are not saying that he went to a place of punishment after his death. Instead, we are saying something both simpler and more profound. Jesus truly died. His body was laid in a tomb, and his soul entered the realm of the dead, just as every human being does. This is essential to the gospel. Jesus did not merely appear to die, he did not faint, and he did not escape death. He fully entered into the human condition, even to the point of death itself. But Psalm 16 tells us something just as important. He was not abandoned there. That's some important phrasing. David does not say, "You will keep me from Sheol." He says, "You will not abandon me to Sheol." Jesus entered death, but death could not hold him. And that leads to the second part of the verse. You will not allow your faithful one to see decay. Peter makes the connection explicit. Unlike David, Jesus' body did not undergo corruption. Why? Because he rose on the third day. Death was real, but it was not final. This is the heart of the resurrection. Jesus passes through death, enters the realm of the dead, and then comes out the other side. Not abandoned, not corrupted, but victorious. Here is where the passage turns from explanation to hope. Psalm 16 does not end with death, and instead ends with life. You reveal the path of life to me. In your presence is abundant joy. At your right hand are eternal pleasures. What is true of Christ becomes true of those who belong to him. We will not be abandoned in death because he was not abandoned in death. We will overcome death because he overcame death. Jesus willingly entered the grave and rose from it, so that when we one day enter the grave, we too will rise, just like he did. So when we ask, what does it mean that Jesus was in Hades, we're not wrestling with something strange or mystical. Instead, we're finding out that Jesus went where all the dead go, but he did not stay there. And because of that, the grave is no longer the end of the story for us. Death's victory and its sting have no sway over those found in our resurrected Lord. Thanks for listening, my friends. I hope this has been helpful for your Bible study. Grace and peace to you as you continue your walk with God.